we're going to start with Vera. And Vera, welcome and thank you for being here, for taking time to have this conversation with us. We want to hear from you the perspective from the company. So how are companies facing all these regulatory and social changes in your environment? And how does this increased requirement to report non-financial information impact companies' operation?
Hi, so thank you, and thank you, Serene and Astrid. It's wonderful to be with you here today to discuss this topic. I guess three main ideas that I'd like to convey. Firstly, there's obviously growing demand for ESG disclosure, and we saw this from Celine's presentation, and also for the integration of ESG factors into the business strategy and everyday operations. And I think that the past couple of years, with all that's happened around the globe, has actually heightened the importance, not just of the E, but also of the S, for example, on vulnerable stakeholders. And this demand for ESG disclosure is coming from investors. 85% of investment professionals say that they take ESG factors into account when investing. And in fact, ESG-oriented investments have experienced a significant rise. There's also growing demand for an ESG focus from customers. A recent consumer study released by the European Commission showed that for more than half of European consumers, environmental concerns actually influence their purchasing decisions. And almost 70% said that they would buy products that were better for the environment, even if it meant paying a premium. So adequately disclosing this information is really key to build a competitive advantage in the market. But it's also important for employees. If we think that at the end of this decade, the millennials and Gen Z will make up over 70% of the world's workforce, compared to 50% at the beginning of the decade. These generations really place greater importance on environmental and social concerns than their predecessors. And so they will expect a lot more from employers on these issues, and that means that disclosing this information is key. The second idea is that this growing demand also means it demands more accountability, greater regulatory scrutiny, and a credible disclosure. It's not just about disclosing, but making it credible. And I think that tools such as the EU taxonomy that were implemented to secure investors and protect them from greenwashing and shift investments to where they are most needed and better deployed is absolutely fundamental. I think there are important examples of recent international developments and initiatives in the EU, like the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, where companies are looking to respond to these recommendations. And this is a voluntary framework, but EDP, for example, has been reporting according to these standards since 2018. We also consider the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. And these are, we've made a big effort of aligning with this taxonomy so that we really, bring credibility to our disclosure. And finally, accurate reporting obviously also requires a lot of extra effort from companies. We've been focusing on keeping, sustainability efforts transparent, and we see a lot of companies around us, certainly ourselves, taking necessary steps to create this awareness and credibility around our ESG performance. However, given the broad scope of the reporting tools, and every tool has its own methodology and its own framework and approaches to materiality, so it's not always easy for companies to collect information and to reply to different ESG surveys and prepare ESG information. It takes knowledge, it takes commitment, time and resources to implement. I mean, we ourselves have been setting up specific teams to make sure that this flows through the entire organization, and that and as regulation evolves, we continue to be proactive in the adoption of the most recognized reporting standards, and we always have these dedicated teams that assure that in the front line we are adopting these frameworks. So at EDP, we'll continue to embrace this change, and we welcome the implementation of this regulation. We've presented a target of more than 70% of revenues aligned with the EU taxonomy by 2025. And we also follow closely the regulatory developments in sustainable finance. I think, we have a long track record and recognition across all main ESG ratings and across several indices. The Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, Dow Jones Sustainability Index, the S&P Global Clean Energy Index. I mean, we really keep close track, make a point of scoring well. The executive board, as well as the entire organization, is also actually has its performance aligned with these metrics as part of our KPIs and as part of our remuneration at the end of the year. So we're taking this very seriously, but we know it's a big effort. It will require time for a gradual adaptation and implementation of all the work that has to be done.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Vera. And we want to move now from the company's perspective to the board's perspective. I don't know, Maria, we have lost your image. There you are. So we wanted to hear from you, how can boards balance that pressure to take imminent action to face new challenges with the actual time needed to design and launch meaningful ESG initiatives? Maria, you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, okay, sorry for this. In fact, I'm sitting in 4 boards. One of them is Telefónica, and I'm a member of the Sustainability Commission, also in a family business, and also in a financial institution, CACEIS. I'm participating in the board there, in the board in Spain and in Latin America, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, and Chile. No? And my other life is academic. No, I'm the co-director of IE Sustainability Executive Course. No, so I see our students, our speakers, and I have board members assisting to our courses. No. So I'm going to try to share my experience these last 4 years in boards and on sustainability. No, so what I really see that is going on. No, so in fact, 2 years ago, I felt not very transparent in the corporate IE, because we were transmitting a very positive stance on sustainability. Everything was value creation, consumer. Everything what would be hearing this, no? But on the other hand, I was seeing, I said, to be fair, I have to identify also and listen to people that don't believe in sustainability, or to analyze the hurdles that they are having, no? And it's very interesting, because the question you sent me was directed exactly to this. No? Most of the responsibles of sustainability in big companies were telling me that the big challenge was to manage the short term and the long term. So when I saw your question, I thought that's really interesting, no? Because it took me time to get to this conclusion. I was right on your question. No? And this is what they were telling me. No, we have an issue here. So trying to understand why it was taking time. No. So in the short terms, what I have experienced, and listening to our executives that come to our courses and my experience at board, is, the catalyst has been governance, regulation, no, compliance. No, we have to issue a non-financial information report. Suppliers are coming to us asking for, figures on CO2 emissions. So this has been, I would say, the first catalyst. No, but at the same time, it has been the financial sector, which is is probably the sector that is most advanced on that. No, so basically, in the short term, we're having, on top of this economy, the shareholders directive, the sustainability directive, all these things, no, and standards. At the same time, EU taxonomy, which is very important right now, and there's a very strong focus there. If you want, I can talk about that. But basically, on the financial sector, investors, BlackRock have, all these institutional investors have very strong ESG experts, and we're making questions to our CEO and to all the team, no, and what were we doing, no? So, but it wasn't just the investor, also the bondholders, the rating agencies, the equity analysts are right now issuing reports on ESGs, no, and giving their opinion, no. Rating agencies, Moody's, are also taking into account ESG rating, no? So to some extent, I would say that in the short term, my experience is that these two have been the catalyst. No, we have to do something because our suppliers, the investment community, the banks, no, for example, are asking us for all this information, no, and this has been the catalyst, no. But having a long-term view, in the long term, at the same time, sustainability is core, is within the strategy. This is a very important difference between social responsibility and philanthropy, you know? So, for example, taking Santander, I worked there 30 years. They have Santander Universidades, no? Which is the largest project and university in the world with 1,400 university, I think, no? Something like that. But university is not core to a financial institution, no? So now we see at Santander, which is really admirable, no, what they've done in terms of ESG reporting and everything, no. So it's within the strategy. So it's much more profound, no. So we have to think it's transversal. It's going to affect, you know, auditing, compliance, financial, investor relations, marketing, commercial, product, everything, no. So it's really sustainable. It's really transversal, no? It affects, so it is within the strategy. So we have to build up the strategy, the 5 years, 10-year strategy, take into consideration sustainability issues. And this includes, for example, the remuneration policy, having targets for the bonus in terms of ESG goals, no? Also, commercial incentives, no? To a commercial force, no? It also includes terms in terms of governance, as you were saying. We are being asked and pressured in terms of size of the board, diversity, CO duality, these kind of things is getting a lot of attention, no? So to some extent, what we are seeing is that we have to move from the small g of governance in boards to the big G. And moving from the small g to the big G is a very profound change, where we have to move, for example, from shareholders capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. You can see that companies don't talk so much right now about shareholder value. We have to take into account stakeholders, which means all group of interest, clients, employees, suppliers, the society in general. So any strategy, for example, when I'm sitting a board and we have to take a decision, I have to revise what's going to be the impact of that decision on employees, on clients, on suppliers, on the society in general, no? You know, the 5 blocks of stakeholders, no? It also means that we're moving from linear economy to circular economy. It's a change of mindset. I have to measure the positive and negative externalities, no? Waste, for example. I have to, in the risk department, for example, there's a new category of emerging risk and ESG risk. I mean, if we have a factory in the Philippines, which has the risk of being flooded because the increase in the level of the sea, I have maybe to consider provision, no, or something, no? So that's why the transition is it's a profound revision, no, of the company. For example, it's very interesting right now with Ukraine, no? There's the PPPs, public-private projects, no? We are seeing a very strong response in COVID and Ukraine from the private sector, no? So you have a responsibility with the society. You're not immune. It's not something that is the government have to deal with that, no? So it's a complete new way of thinking, no? So my experience is that this implies a revision of IT systems. I mean, when you talk with big companies like Santander or Telefónica, we operate in different countries, in Germany, in the UK, in Brazil, in Chile, in Colombia, in Argentina. So in terms of system, for example, maybe you have to tick around 800 data points. So it's not minor, no? To measure the equal pay, for example, no? You have different countries. In terms of governance, for example, the data protection laws are not the same in the different places, no? So in terms of how you're going to do this with that, no? So this is basically it. I think I'm not surpassing my time, but my last sentence would be that I mean, sustainability, we have to understand the word is sustainable. No? Sustainability has a level of resilience. And at both levels, the way so basically, It's more about the how than the what. And the way we are dealing with it in terms of governance, you can see the biggest company are creating Sustainability Commission. There's new roles, just as the Chief Sustainability Officer, no? And it's very important if the reporting, no? If the how the Chief Sustainability Officers has to be close to the CEO or to the board, and to the board, I would say. So that's it, basically. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Yeah, I mean, boards still have a lot on their plates and moving forward. Now moving to regulatory. Lydia, thank you for making a time in your agenda. We know that the couple last weeks have been especially busy for you. We know that on February 23rd, the European Commission proposed a directive on corporate diligence and governance that would require large companies to ensure against pollution, biodiversity loss, and human rights, including child labor. How will this impact the governance of companies based in or operating in the European Union?
First of all, good morning to everyone, and I very much appreciate the invitation to join the International Women's Day Forum of Kearney's this year. So it's a pleasure to share this platform and to have the opportunity to speak and share some thoughts with such a high level of speakers and attendees. Going straight to the point. The general topic revealing the S and G of ESG couldn't be more important, topical, and I want to congratulate Kearney on the conscious decision to debate on this issue. I understand the special interest of your audience on the legislation soon to be negotiated on corporate due diligence, and I hope I can give you in less than 10 minutes a proper state of play on this legislative process that you are very much interested in. So environmental, social, and governance, ESG, the famous criteria that is having more and more importance in the corporate world. For various reasons, for investment reasons, for strategic decision reasons. So it is as a set of standards for companies, fundamental choices in operations and investments in value chains is crucial to guarantee that Europe as a whole is leading in the path towards a sustainable, fair, and future-oriented economy. The proposal for a directive on corporate sustainability due diligence that was recently presented by the European Commission is therefore a step towards this objective. So I will have like a three-level approach to address this topic, and the reason behind this proposal, the content of the proposal, and the impact on industry with the information we have so far. So the first question I would like to raise is why do we need this new directive? First, we need to guarantee that green and digital transition, so the two pillars of our recovery strategy, they are fulfilled in full respect of with the highest standards of environmental and social protection. At the same time that we reassure the EU's commitment to human rights protection within the Union and around the world. Second, we have to respond to industry requests. 70% of companies want a harmonized EU legal framework on due diligence for human rights and environmental impacts. And that is not only an industry request, as 8 out of 10 consumers, and this was already referred in a different way by previously in this conference, 8 out of 10 consumers refer that sustainability is a matter of importance when making their choices. If I can make a brief parenthesis here, we are witnessing the increased importance of reputation of companies for consumers' decision on buying their products and services. And that's why compliance costs have increased over the last 10, 15 years. But at the same time, the value of the reputation of businesses has to be looked after as ever before. So this is relevant. The third, we need to value voluntary action from companies with a set of rules that define the standards, but it is this is only the starting point for our companies. And in that dimension, the proposal can even go beyond. Usually, companies are more concerned with the first stage of their value chain. And as the chain continues, these priorities start to be mitigated by the circumstances of economic activity, and the natural business-oriented approach. In any case, this proposal can take advantage of the good experience so many stakeholders have to offer, and many members of Parliament, European Parliament and national parliaments, and me included. We will surely count on the industry contributions for our work on this report. A fourth reason, we have to deliver on people's expectations, or citizens' expectations. I prefer the word people and person instead of citizen, regarding the better protection of our rights. With a clear and transparent rules on due diligence, European citizens have the guarantee that large companies respect the ESG criteria and can make better options concerning the products, the services they buy, or products and services that they buy or request. So this is a market trust issue, and we can't ignore the public will get more information on the biggest companies operating in Europe. A fifth reason, we have to deliver on businesses' expectations, companies' expectations concerning the adequate level playing field. As I said, there are a lot of companies that already have these kind of policies in force within their corporate strategy, and this requires a high commitment and often a compliance cost. So it is important to guarantee that all big companies in Europe are operating in the same set of minimal rules regarding ESG. Finally, we have to deliver on the EU commitment with a global leadership on the matter of human rights protection and stand for a sustainable common future. So with these proposal pretension to apply to non-EU companies that want to access the internal market, we guarantee that the level playing field is assured. And most importantly, we send a clear message for international companies. If you want to access the full benefits of our internal market, you have to play by our rules, and you have to respect human rights, environmental goals, and social responsibility. A second dimension that I want to focus in this address is, what does the proposal say, and what do we think about it? So two main issues. The first one here is the set of obligations for the industry. The amount of requirements is focused on identification, strategy to bring to an end, prevention, mitigation, and accountability concerning negative human rights and environmental impacts on the operations. So when you look at the proposal from the Commission, we are talking about the provisions set in Article 4 and then on Articles 5 to 11. This set of rules is clear on the obligations the Commission wants the Member States to transpose into national law. And it is a considerable set of requirements. The point here is that our main concern is on the compliance costs and possible excessive administrative burden. It is true that we are talking about big companies, but the provision of so many duties can represent a significant cost for companies and their subsidiaries of branches. And another dimension of the problem is that the private initiative protection. There are a lot of rules that are easily enforced, linked to corporate strategies or communication duties. But when you go beyond that and refer to relations with business partners or investment decisions, you have to be careful for not violating the right for private initiative. The second topic here on the content is the scope and the division into two groups of companies comprehended in the legislation. Almost 10,000 EU companies, almost 3,000 are non-EU operating, non-European Union companies operating in Europe, fall within the group of the 500 plus employees and more than 150 million turnover. And more than 3,000 EU companies have more than 250 employees. They have more than 40 million turnover and operate in designated sectors. Concerns. One of them is with the protection of competitiveness of our companies. Not only the adequate threshold on the first group, but also with the potential impact on companies listed on the second group, since this creates something like an anathema on these sectors. And we can't risk to label the textile industry or the agriculture sector as something like dangerous areas when they are crucial for our economies. And in particular, if we reflect upon the need for a recovery strategy and job creation. So as you can imagine, this is a major concern from a Portuguese member of parliament perspective. And on the other hand, our main priority will be the protection of our SMEs. We must ensure this new legislation promotes the competitiveness of our SMEs that are the skeleton of our economy, at the same time that we guarantee that they also commit with adequate, reasonable and proportional contributions. So the impact of these new set of rules must be mitigated on the SME side, that will always be affected, even in an indirect way, as they are out of scope. The third question I want to raise is what will be the expectable impact on the industry? The main impact on industry is focused from our point of view in three levels: compliance costs, level playing field, and financing opportunities. Compliance costs are unavoidable as new obligations are emerging. Level playing field is topical as the process of transposition in 27 different legal frameworks can continue to hold loopholes. And financing opportunities can emerge from this directive, as the Commission guarantees that there are 75 funded EU's actions to promote the fulfillment of these directives' objectives. So, of course, we are talking about a limited impact on big companies, but it will surely have secondary effects on business partners and SMEs. And that is why this legislation has to count on the industry contributions. And therefore, I urge you to contact members of the European Parliament from your constituencies in this regard. The impact will be at short term on the big companies, but will affect business partners at medium term and SMEs in the long run. So finally, some notes on the procedure for this legislation to enter in force and our position on it. We have to be aware that this is a complex legislative procedure. Not only the proposal is totally new, but the topic is sensitive and gives the floor for significant political divergences, both inside the European Parliament among the different political groups and in the European Council among the member states' governments. So although the title refers to an amending procedure of the Directive 2019-1937 on the protection of persons who report breaches of union law, the truth is that it is only an adjustment to guarantee through proposed Articles 23 and 27 that there is a proper link between the two pieces of legislation. On the Parliament side, it is important to note that the Committee on Legal Affairs, URI, is the leading committee on the matter. But we have 12 other committees entitled to an opinion. The Committee on Economic and Monetary Affairs will have its opinion, but it is important to underline that both URI and Econ rapporteurs are from the same political group, Socialists and Democrats, and in any case, our political group will not give up on our main priorities within the negotiations, both in the leading committee and in the Econ side. So as everyone can understand, a legislative procedure with the involvement of 13 parliamentary committees and in such sensitive topics can represent a long and complex process that can be prolonged for several months. On the Council side, we have to be aware of the significant differences on the national approaches, as several member states have already national regimes in force and others working on national legislation. So the debate can be before and after the Parliament's position more complex than most of us are expecting. To sum it up, and I think I'm already beyond my 10 minutes, we can expect a relatively long period of debate and negotiations in the Parliament and mainly at the member states level. And keep in mind that Parliament and Council have to agree on the final outcome. So the best scenario, I would say, is the end of this year. And then the transposition period starts, and we are talking about 2 years for national laws to enter in force. I don't want to risk foreseeing timetables, but I would have 2025 in mind when looking for the first day of full application of these rules, followed by the traditional transition periods. So I hope this brief overview on this piece of legislation is useful for your work, and we are always open to receive contributions from the stakeholders involved. Don't get me wrong, I strongly support this piece of European legislation, and I believe it is important to guarantee ESG criteria is more present in our companies' identities and business models. What I also know is that this can't be done jeopardizing our companies' competitiveness and capacity to generate wealth for the countries, tax revenues for the states, and jobs for the people. And that is why I'm so committed with this process and that I'm counting on your valuable contributions. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lydia, for bringing us your perspective on this new EU directive for corporate diligence and governance. So, and also to Maria and Vera for sharing your views on ESG and how it's impacting companies and boards. So I would like now to move to the last question of our panel today, which I'm going to address to the three panelists, all of them successful women in key governance roles. And the question is, so in your opinion, how do you believe diversity in governance impacts the definition and implementation of ESG initiatives? And I would move back to Vera. Vera, please go ahead. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Anna. Well, I think it's relatively consensual and increasingly quantified that diversity positively contributes to corporate results. It improves capacity to innovate. You know, employees with diverse backgrounds bring to the table different perspectives, ideas, and experiences. It builds resilience, which is actually an important weapon heading into the next decade. And as we saw from the last couple of years, and by gathering people who behave and respond to external stimulus in different ways, diverse companies are better at withstanding unanticipated changes and adapting to external threats. And diversity is at the basis of adaptiveness. Now, these skills are highly relevant to build a solid and impactful ESG strategy. I know the business as usual will definitely not be enough for a solid ESG strategy. And as was flagrantly clear from the wonderful interventions from my colleagues, a diverse leadership will certainly lead to better perception of transparency, fairness, and inclusion, while reinforcing a broader and multi-level business mindset, consequently leading to better decisions. So at a top executive level, for example, a company's board of directors is a fundamental component of corporate governance. So I really do believe that boards do need to have a good mix of age, gender, professional experience, and background to foster a constructive debate and decision making to reflect the strategic priorities of the business and the diversity of its stakeholders. So an ESG global strategy will be stronger if the board's composition reflects this diversity, as I said, in thinking, in background, in skills, in experience, in expertise, in tenure, and obviously in gender. When it comes to EDP, we still have a way an extension to run in pushing diversity forward. Although today, we're already in a pretty interesting position. We have a female representation at EDP's boards of 40%. And in 2021, the number of women in the EDP group increased to nearly 27%, which is also the same percentage that we have for women in management positions, which is typically an important challenge for companies. Sometimes it's easier to raise the overall number of women in the companies. It also depends on the industry, obviously, but women in management positions is absolutely fundamental so that we keep building that pipeline that then leads up to the executive board and ensures that level of diversity. To promote diversity, we have a plan for gender equality with over 200 measures that cover areas from equality and access to employment to equal pay to work and life balance. And we've committed to the target gender equality in the UN Global Compact, as well as to the women empowerment principles, which among others is a clear signal and step up of our commitments, showing that the company does want to perform differently when it comes to diversity from across all its structure. And this will also, we believe this will play an important role also in supporting our own business commitment to lead the energy transition. We do count on the diversity of our teams in all of its dimensions to build a unique positioning in ESG that will really allow us to achieve our goals of leading the energy transition in this extraordinary time of accelerated change in the energy industry. And we want to do this in a fair and inclusive way. So as part of our overall strategy, it is to lead the energy transition, but it is to do it fairly and inclusively. And that requires a very strong presence of an ESG mindset that I believe diversity apports a lot to.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vera. I would now hand on to Maria. Maria, what's your view on this question?
Okay, well, the first thing I forgot to say thank you to A.T. Kearney. It's really an honor for me to be here and with the other speakers. And I wanted to come back to Celine's presentation, which I was really impressed, and also because I read the document that's behind it. I've been 30 years in investment banking, so my role was to try to analyze companies, value companies, and see possibilities or strategies to increase the valuation. And the premiums you are talking about, from a technical point of view and valuation, basically reflects the beta, so the risk profile. So an ESG strategy reduces your risk profile, no? And also in terms of opportunities and efficiency, So that's why I think those premiums are being recognized, but also because there's a very strong liquidity in the market right now for ESG initiatives. So ESG as an opportunity, because sometimes we get depressed with all these compliance hurdle and administrative and all that stuff and confusion and all that. No? But going back to your question, diversity, governance, and ESG. No? Governance has to do on how you govern a company. How do you move the company or lead the company, towards a sustainable long-term strategy. This is my responsibility as a board member. The number one is the long-term sustainability of the company. When I did my certification in corporate governance, this is verse one. So diversity. The way I see diversity from the angle of a board member, and also take into consideration that my previous 30 years life was about analyzing company, doing projections and trying to understand the companies and all that and the strategy, is not just about women. Diversity, the way I see it is you have to think when you are designing a board, how can you honor your stakeholders, so your clients. So it's very different if you're a B2C company or a B2B company, for example. How can you honor your employees? How can you honor your suppliers and your shareholders? So for example, when I started my journey in corporate governance 5 years ago, and I was studying, for example, one thing that was surprising in Spain in the IBEX 35 is that about 40% of the EBITDA was coming from Latin America. And you were not having, you could look at the boards and there was not really representatives from Latin America. So, you have a big part of your clients are from Latin America and employees. So you have to honor that, because they are important, they are buying your products, they are working. And so this is diversity is much more than woman. For me, that's very clear. Although woman is the first step, I would say, or a very important step. The second thing is when you look at stakeholders, they're also very diverse. For example, you look at shareholders, we talk about shareholders, but some of them are retail shareholders, otherwise are institutional shareholders, or control shareholders. So also you have to think about how you are dealing with that. So all in all, I would say, how does diversity in governance impact ESG? If you are sitting, I'm going to make it very clear. We have two eyes. Will anybody of us decide to just close one eye and look at life with one eye, which is 2D. When you open the other one, you get the 3D, okay? It doesn't make sense, So why should you look at the world with just one eye, So you have to, in terms of diversity, it is also very important, to look at all the resources. There's one concept in sustainability, which is innovability, which I like very much. In the past, I was sitting at Indra's board also, and this is something we did. Entrepreneurial initiatives, So asking, to all of our employees, telling them, everything that we do, can you look for a use in terms of sustainability? Well, the same thing happens with diversity, when I'm sitting in a board, and as a woman, everything I see a product, I see from a woman angle also, For example, in the telecom and media world, you can see that the basic content is sport, for example, or football, but for example, sometimes I think, for example, in Latin America, what about educational content? For a woman, it's more important the education. What your sons or daughters are studying and everything. So, that's why I want to claim that. And also, there's something which I might a bit have a different view. When we talk about women, getting to 50% of women in a top position, everything, there's also a verticality in company, not just transversality. So, for example, in engineering, and I'm involved on telecommunication, media, and technology all my life, it's mostly engineers. It is very difficult. Right now, you have representation of society. So, for example, in Spain, just 20% of the graduates in engineering are women. So sometimes it's not that easy, to reach that level for an engineering company than from a consumer product company, So also in terms of diversity, we have to think also, which sector, the essence of the company. So I hope I answer to your question. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for mentioning Kearney's Value and Leadership Index for ESG. I will make a brief note also on that at the end of our session. And then finally, moving to Lydia. Lydia, what are your thoughts on the role of diversity in governance and its impact on ESG initiatives?
Well, the impact on environment, on ESG, when diversity is real, and when we talk about diversity, I think we are going, or real diversity is going beyond the gender or race. It comprehends several other dimensions of our identity. So I think it's clearly positive. From the point of view of a European legislator, a member of parliament, diversity is key, as I witness in firsthand the impact of having to deal with at least 27 different national perspectives on the same matter, and multiplying it for the political forces represented in the parliament. So this is sometimes a boiling pot for distrust and blockage. But the truth is that it values our work. And the result of so many balances is, by general rule, intelligent and effective legislation that impacts the lives of millions across Europe. Well, I would take the opportunity in my capacity as a MEP to give you some breaking news on a specific topic related to what we are discussing concerning diversity. I have the information that Women's on Boards Directive, officially titled Gender Balance Among Non-Executive Directors of Companies Listed on Stock Exchanges, is going out of the 1 decade-long blockage in the Council. So from what I know, the French presidency of the Council of the EU wants to approve the mandate for negotiations, and it will most probably happen next week. And this is some good news in the week we celebrate the International Women's Day. Of course, it will be important to update and change some things, but we can foresee some steps forward in the next weeks. If I may, also a personal comment, this directive is going to touch upon many things. One of them is quotas of women on boards. I would prefer not having quotas, but from what I see in the political sphere, they are necessary. The problem that it might then compromise or bring some difficulties in managing quality and other factors. But in any case, at least it brings the discussion about the importance of diversity. I can tell you that sometimes, and it happened this week, it's a bit strange to be sitting when we are in a big lunch with 30 people or 40 people, to be just with another 2 colleagues, female colleagues, in the big round table. It doesn't reflect the diversity that we have in our countries, in the different dimensions of our societies. So in any case, that's what I wanted to conclude. That we need to underline the need to value diversity in all fields of the society. It is important to have in mind the experience of my other 2 fellow speakers. They brought to this topic on their professional experience. My political contribution is that although legislation can help, in the end, we count on the stakeholders and businesses, companies in particular, to set the standards. This is a bit like the environment. If we don't have all the stakeholders involved, we will fail implementing the Green Deal, the Fit for 55, taxonomy, and all the rest. So we have to embrace everyone on this. So everyone has to feel a bit of, they have to feel convoked to this call. So once again, I want to thank your attention. I remain at your disposal for any follow-up questions, and to congratulate Ana Gabriela, Vera Pinto Moreira, and Maria Otondo for the opportunity to speak with them and to share some views on this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lydia, and also thank you for sharing such breaking news on this Women's on Boards Directive we should be seeing in the next few days. So just to close up, so I believe we've had such an amazing session, just recapping from starting with our colleague Celine with an overview on how voluntary disclosure requirements of ESG metrics have accelerated so much in the past years, and how inaction is for sure not a viable option for companies. And Vera with the perspective on how ESG and its growing demands are being taken by consideration by key companies in their day-to-day operations, particularly the very interesting case of EDP with its ambitious compliance targets of more than 70% of revenues aligned with the EU taxonomy by 2025, and ambitious targets also for towards diversity, women on board and management positions. So it's quite impressive, and thank you so much, Vera, for sharing that with us today. Maria, very interesting dwelling on the dichotomy boards are facing now, balancing short-term and long-term ESG related pressures. And how this is critical, no, for boards to make that move from, you mentioned the small g to the big G of governance. It was a very interesting analogy that for sure we will keep moving from profit to purpose, shareholder to stakeholder capitalism, to be able to derive these long-term strategies that fully embrace sustainability at its core, and not only on the short term. And then finally, Lydia, thank you so much for the EU perspective. So this new directive on corporate diligence and governance. So we understand that it will be critical to guarantee the translation of EU's ambition on a green and digital transition and the highest standards of environmental and social protection. And it's very, I think it's very interesting for everyone on this panel and our audience to understand the impacts and implications it will have for companies. So I would just like to make one final note, just 1 minute, so not to take on more of your time. So indeed at Kearney, we are following ESG requirements closely, and we are supporting companies across the globe, incorporating them at the core of their strategies. And one interesting thing, we get often asked the question, so is now the right time for companies to show ESG leadership? How immediate is this, should this concern be? So our answer definitely is yes, for sure the time is now. So adding on to what all that has been said by our panelists, so we, through our ESG Value and Leadership Index, have indeed seen that the market is rewarding companies in specific sectors that display ESG leadership. So we've analyzed more than 250 companies around the world, and we have been able to identify valuation gaps that range between 25 and 150% for ESG leaders, especially in sectors that are emissions intensive. So in these industries where ESG leadership is associated, we try to put a dollar value on this, and we see that this translates in the $200 billion opportunity that can be tackled worldwide if companies rise to the occasion. So for sure, so why wait when we truly believe that companies should not wait. And diversity indeed in implementing ESG, as our panel discussed, so there's an overall agreement that diversity is critical. So boards, as much diverse as possible, reflecting the diversity of their stakeholders, from investors, from their investors to customers, to their talent, and that is the only way to possible to derive and implement long-term strategies that have sustainability at their core. So I would like again to thank so much to our panel, Lydia, Maria, Vera, for such insightful discussion today, as well to my colleagues Celine and Astrid, and to Kearney Global for hosting our International Women's Day Forum around the globe under the topic Be Bold, Make a Change. So in the following days, we will be recapping the global event on LinkedIn through posts and communication. So when we can continue our conversation from there, we welcome our participants and attendees to comment on the posts that we will be sharing to pursue this conversation further. Again, thank you very much for everyone for attending. Have a wonderful day.